Do you really need a rune Pokemon in Regulation C? What's going on, everyone? This is Zach, and today I kind of want to talk about this. With the results of EUIC, we're seeing some changes in the metagame. It's getting a lot bulkier, including Fluttermane, for example, and you're seeing less rune Pokemon. Now, if we take a look at Fort Wayne and the Sydney regionals were the first regionals in the Regulation C format. You can see that every team besides Joe UX9 at Fort Wayne has a rune Pokemon, at least one, some having two, like Fiona in 4th, Nathaniel in 4th. And besides Joe UX9, we have to go down to 16th to find another team that lacks a rune Pokemon. So the first one, a lot of people were using the rune Pokemon with the Fluttermanes, with the Dragapults, with the Dragonites, and just taking advantage of the boost. And then you also have Ting-Lu, and Ting-Lu is kind of the exception to this rule. And the one thing that I do want to note here is that in Fort Wayne, at least, Wo-Chien doesn't come in until 32nd place. So that's really interesting because it's quite the opposite. When you look at the Sydney regionals, you'll see that every team has at least one rune Pokemon, with they're having 3 Wo-Chien showings in the top 8, and then you don't get a non-rune Pokemon team until Lewis down here in 13th with a pretty unique team, pretty cool team. But when it comes to the rune Pokemon, I think Fort Wayne and Sydney, a lot of people are like, ooh, new toys, let's try these out, let's see how they work. And now a lot of people are like bulking up and countering them instead. And it brings me to a point that Moxie Marcos Perez, Moxie Boost It, said, and why do I need to put Ting-Lu on my team when my opponent is bringing theirs for me? And I think that's a really good point. A lot of the teams that I've been seeing after Fort Wayne, after Sydney, were more of teams that take advantage of these rune Pokemon, but don't necessarily use them on the team. Now, when we look at EUIC, we got James Evans here, who brought a team that featured Chien-pao. And he said, I brought Chien-pao to one match the entire weekend. He literally ran a 5-mon team. So because he wasn't bringing Chien-pao, he was running with a suboptimal team because he wasn't bringing the Chien-pao, he wasn't using it. And that's something that when you're team building, when you're team testing, that's something you look at. Is there a mon that I'm not using? Is there a mon that's not filling its role? Is there a mon that can be changed to something that will suit my needs better? I'm sure James would have done fine whether or not he brought the Chien-pao, because he's a really good player. But when we look at the EUIC finals, you see that both these teams, they only have a Ting-Lu here. And like I said, Ting-Lu is kind of the exception because of its outstanding bulk, because of the way it can take hits and the way it can disrupt with things like Stealth Rock, Stopping Tantrum, Ruination, and if you still want to, Fissure. But neither of these Ting-Lus had Fissure. We can see where they're paced. We'll have to go back. We'll open up Gabriel's team and Paul's team. So Gabriel's Ting-Lu had the Assault Vest, the more typical set, Terra Poison, Stomping Tantrum, Ruination, Heavy Slam, and went for the Stone Edge. I prefer Rock Slide, but Stone Edge is probably a lot better damage-wise. And then, once again, we see the same thing, but with Sand Tomb, which is, I believe, a trapping move. Rock Tomb, lower speed. Sand Tomb is a trapping move. It's kind of like Fire. It's the rock version of Fire Spin, in all honesty. And I think that's really good as well, to force a Pokemon to stay in to deal with it. And both of these teams run the Palafin, Arcanine, Amoonguss, the FAP. They run the FAP, the Fluttermane, the Amoonguss, the Arcanine, the Palafin. So when we look at this, with the 2 finalists only having 1 rune Pokemon, and if you watch the finals, neither of them bring the Ting-Lu. I don't know if that's true. Maybe Gabriel brings it the one match. No, I feel like every time it was Flutter Mane, Palafin, Arcanine, and Amoonguss from Paul, and then every single time it was Baxcalibur, Palafin, Arcanine, Amoonguss from Gabriel. But when we look at the usage, all of them except for Chi-Yu versus day one, we have, you know, the FAP core up here, the Palance, as some people are calling it. With Ting-Lu is commonly with these 6. So these 6 saw very common results in Flutter Mane at 80%, which is insane, especially because Flutter Mane is starting to see some variety with its spreads. It's no longer really just the booster or the focus sash. You're now seeing choice specs a lot more. You're seeing life orb a lot more, and you're seeing a lot more bulk. But Chien-Pao at 31%, Chi-Yu at 27%, and if we go over to day 2, Ting-Lu goes up. So Ting-Lu had better results overall. Chien-Pao drops down, and Chi-Yu goes up just a little. And it came to a point where Play Pokemon was actually memeing on the fact that Wo-Chien was nowhere to be found, which has been common in the US side of the tournaments, as we've seen with Fort Wayne here. And that's kind of sad because I thought that Wo-Chien was pretty good and pretty fun to use, except for now Amoonguss. This core is everywhere. In this core, Amoonguss basically and Arcanine can shut down the Wo-Chien. It either has to Terrasilize to deal with Arcanine's Flare Blitz, or Terrasilize to not take ×4 damage to Pollen Puff, which is insane that Amoonguss is an attacker now. Like, it has a good attacking move because of all these Pokemon having the Dark type, which means it's getting some kind of damage, if anything neutral, against all of these Pokemon. So where am I going with this? Basically, I think that you can build a team around to take advantage of the different Rune Pokemon, mostly Chien-Pao and Chi-Yu and Ting-Lu, because you really don't have to worry about Wo-Chien. And we've seen this with the FAP core with Flutter Mane, Arcanine, and Amoonguss. Now, Chien-Pao usually stuck around with Palafin, Dragonite, a lot of times King Gambit. I still think that Chien-Pao can be good with King Gambit because King Gambit really needs like the extra boost on Sucker Punch to do well, because it doesn't have the speed that Chien-Pao has. But most of the time, you've just seen Dragonite run with Dragonite. Dragonite's been good before Chien-Pao, and it's good with Chien-Pao, and it's good without Chien-Pao. It's just, Dragonite's just good with the extreme speed set, and you can do Terra Flying to deal with Amoonguss. You can do Terra Normal to get more from the extreme speed, and then Palafin with Jet Punch as well. Like, the priority is King right now, and Chien-Pao enables that. But if, just like Marco said, if a Chien-Pao's on the field, you're taking advantage of it, except for going into the Chien-Pao. So why put a spot on a team when you can just build more Pokemon that can take advantage of it? And like I said, these Pokemon are so good without Chien-Pao. We see this with the Palafin, Arcanine, Amoonguss core. We see this with Dragonite still having showings, and I'm pretty sure it had a higher percentage. Yeah, it had 10% more in day 2 than Chien-Pao, which means there are teams that have Dragonite but don't have Chien-Pao, and that's because if there's a Chien-Pao on the field and you have a Dragonite, your Dragonite is still taking advantage of the defense drops. And so that's what I really had like hard times with, are teams that would counter it. So, and that's what it comes with Chi-Yu. With Chi-Yu, you see Flutter Mane, you see Bundle, and sometimes Glamora. But the Chi-Yu and the special defense drops, like, you're also hurting your partner Pokemon. So Iron Bundle is not as seen as much as Flutter Mane because Flutter Mane has a super high special defense. So getting a little bit of a drop isn't that bad for Flutter Mane, or with Iron Bundle, it makes it super frail on the special defensive side. The same thing with Dragonite and Palafin. Their defenses are respectable, but if it has to sit next to a Chien-pao, especially if you're playing speed ties here, every little bit helps. Which is why when you see the Palafin Arcanine Amoonguss core, like Arcanine has Intimidate to lower the physical attack on your opponent's side. Ting-Lu has the Vessel of Ruin to lower the special attack on your opponent's side. So between those two mons, Palafin gets a little bit more protection. It gets a little bit more cushion to be more aggressive. With the Amoonguss, it has the utility of Spore, Rage Powder, Pollen Puff to heal it up, which you saw this with Gabriel's team having the substitute Palafin, which I thought was pretty cool. At the same time, there's only one on that core. There's only one special attacker, and that's the Fluttermane. That's why Fluttermane is having like such high usage, because Fluttermane is such a good mon, and it does good damage to the Ting-Lu, but the Ting-Lu still weakens it. So if you're down to Fluttermane Ting-Lu, you're actually weakening yourself. If you're running Wo-Chien, or if Wo-Chien's on the field, you're threatened by the Arcanine Palafin Amoonguss, but you're also hurting whatever physical attackers are on your side. So like these mons are literally a double-edged sword, and why do you need more than one on the field? It just comes down to this point that Marco says, why do I need my own when I can take advantage of yours? And I think a lot of people have been doing that. They've been building counter teams to deal with the mons, with the rune mons. So if we look at the day 2 here, Palafin takes advantage of defense drops. Arcanine takes advantage of defense drops. They both also take advantage of the special attack drops. Dragonite takes advantage of the defense drops. Gyarados has really been more of a utility Pokemon, running things like Thunder Wave and Taunt. Iron Hands, I think Iron Hands is surprising here that we're still seeing Iron Hands this high, but like this, just the fake out, there's not a lot of good fake out mons right now. So Iron Hands is one of the best. That in, look at Palafin, look at Gyarados. Bundle. Electric types are very sparse right now, and Iron Hands kind of fills that gap. Not to mention the close combat, the Drain Punch can hit all of the rune Pokemon for super effective and get recovery. We have Bundle over here being the fast mon, taking advantage of Chi-Yu, dealing more damage, being more aggressive. We have King Gambit, who takes advantage of the Chien-pao. But when you look at all these mons, you have to think to yourself, you can just use your opponents, and sure, your opponent can switch out, but then they are taking a turn to return that rune Pokemon in the hopes of using it later. And if they use it later, you can use it later. And if they're having to switch out to be defensive, then you can capitalize on that. I don't know. I think I'm doing all this just to say, like, it's kind of sad that Wo-Chien isn't seeing some good usage. I thought I did very well with it in the GC. I'm gonna have a video where I talk about that, probably coming out tomorrow. But Ting-Lu is the one exception because its bulk is so high. It's got good defense, so it's already lowering the special defense. So you're seeing things like the Assault Vest. You're already up to great numbers. You just bring it up. Why is it all set to a level 100? Because I have it in a box. So with just this investment, you're already at 175. And then you can even it out. Do you want to even it out there? You can just tweak it out. You should always, like, you can always go max HP. The longer Ting-Lu is on the field, the more times it has to click Fissure. The more times it has to click Ruination. The more times it has to click Rock Slide. Heavy Slam. And these moves are disruptive. Of course, with Ting-Lu's speed, you're not going to get any Rock Slide flinches unless you're running like Trick Room or something like that. Stomping Tantrum over Fissure. But yeah, Ting-Lu has the capabilities of, one, enabling the Arcanine Palafin Amoonguss core to be bulkier and to stay on the field and be disruptive. And that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, Ting-Lu is good because it's disruptive and it's hard to get rid of. Wo-Chien was hard to get rid of when we first started with the lead seed set, but then Pollen Puff just destroyed Wo-Chien's chances. Chi-Yu is a great Pokemon, but Palafin really threatens it. Chien-pao, it's more on the frail side, and it doesn't look like it's on the frail side, but when you look at the dark and ice typing, you're 4 times weak to fighting, you're 2 times weak to rock, you're 2 times weak to fairy, you're 2 times weak to fire. Ice is a terrible defensive typing, so this Pokemon would be a little more threatening if it didn't have the ice type. The ice type is what makes it great offensively, but defensively, you're not getting a lot out of it, which is why, like, a lot of people have been running the Focus Sash. A lot of people have been doing just the priority, which, granted, you're still doing a lot of damage with the priority, but with Sucker Punch here, your opponent has to move. There was a global challenge game that I won just by double protecting because I knew that they were going to double Sucker Punch. It was King Gambit and Chien-pao, and I knew they wanted my Flutter Mane off the field. I already clicked Protect once. I knew they were going to Sucker Punch again, so I just clicked Protect again. Because I didn't attack, the Sucker Punch didn't go off. So Chien-pao can sometimes become unpredictable or predictable to use. Secret Sword is a must-have, and then because of, like, the frailness, you need to run Protect, especially if you're Sash. You need to run Protect. A lot of Chien-paos have been going either Terrifier to avoid the burn, or Terra Ghost to avoid the fake out. And honestly, I prefer Ice Spinner because it gets rid of terrain, because Psychic Terrain against Chien-pao teams that thrive off the priority, a Psychic Terrain, even though you're going into a super effective dark type Pokemon, the Psychic Terrain can do really good, which is why, like, I thought Serena was going to be really good, but then, like, Amoonguss was Amoonguss and did Amoonguss things. But what do you think? What is your go-to Ruin Pokemon? I'm kind of leaning on the Ting-Lu. I think in the GC2 I'm just gonna run a FAP team, and that's about it. I'm kind of sad that Wo-Chien isn't good. I definitely thought it had, like, good capabilities, and I did really good with it in the GC, but that's that. But if you sat here and listened to my ramble, I want to say thank you. If you made it this far in the video, I want to say like and subscribe. Let me know what you think about what I talked about in the comments down below. Let me know if you think it's necessary to run a Ruin Pokemon. We've seen people do it with just one mon. We saw the finals go down. We saw the finals go down with one Ruin Pokemon, being the Ting-Lu, and like I said, that's the exception. And Ting-Lu wasn't even brought to the final match. And if you look here, Paula Ruiz, no Ruin Pokemon. Ting-Lu, 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 Chi-Yu, Chi-Yu, Chien-pao, Chien-pao. And 2 Tetsugiri Dodonzos, which I think is still crazy that these 2 are getting usage. And look, on both of these teams, the Dragonite is there. So the Dragonite is there to take advantage of Chien-pao and to take advantage of extreme speed, but you don't need a Chien-pao there. You don't. And that just comes back to the fact that, like, this core is good with or without Chien-pao. It's actually better with Ting-Lu because it's bulkier. Like, Dragonite is good without Chien-pao. I don't know. maybe we thought maybe the ruined Pokemon were overrated and we all had shiny toy syndrome at the beginning. But that's gonna be all. Hope you enjoyed. Till next time, I'm Zach. See everyone later.